Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Fantasy. My skills can be upgraded infinitely. Chapter 26. Remember, don't make mistakes. After a long time, Bai Haokang's breath converged and he slowly opened his eyes. Sharp and terrifying sword energy burst out from his eyes and flew dozens of meters in the void before dissipating. It is still impossible to reach the point where one thought can bring forth thousands of swords and one thought can destroy thousands of swords. Bai Haochang sighed secretly, and then said calmly, "Come in." A deacon in blue walked in with his head lowered, stopped 10 meters away from Bai Haokang, bowed and said, "Sect Master, there is an urgent message." As he spoke, he held out an envelope with both hands. As soon as Bai Haokang raised his hand, the envelope flew up automatically and fell into his palm. Opened the letter and read it carefully. Zhang Hang, Zhang Wenjing's son. In the physical realm, kill a strong man above the 6th level of the true energy realm head-on. As expected, the Tiger Father has no dog son. Please pass on the order. In this competition between the 8th Peak's outer disciples, the reward for the champion will be increased tenfold. Young deacons bowed their heads and responded accordingly. Bai Haokang pondered for a moment and continued. Also, please invite core elder son Feiyu to come over. Yes. The young man bowed and retreated. Ellipsis. The patriarch wants to see me. Inside the main hall, elder son glanced at the deacon who came to deliver the order and nodded calmly. Then he waved his hand, and a golden long sword flew into the air and floated in front of him. Elder son jumped slightly, stood on the sword blade, and his body turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky. The majestic mountain peaks flashed past our feet. After a while, elder son landed outside the sect leader's training hall. The golden long sword automatically flew to the back and returned to the scabbard. Elder son stepped into the hall and looked at Bai Haokang with his eyes closed slightly on the futon. Sect Master, I heard that you were looking for me. That's right. Bai Haokang opened his eyes, his gaze calm and indifferent. Zhang Wenjing's son is already an outer disciple at this time, and he is emerging and showing amazing talent. Have you heard about it? Elder son was slightly surprised. Really? Isn't he a waste? Even joining the clan as a handyman was only done for Zhang Wenjing's sake. Bai Haokang looked at him calmly. It is also appropriate to give preferential treatment to the family members of the sect. In addition, I called you here today to remind you. The hatred between you and Zhang Wenjing has been completely revealed, do you understand? Hearing this, elder son's face darkened and he looked at Bai Haokang coldly. What does the sect master mean by this? Bai Haokang looked at him and did not answer. Instead, he shook his head in disappointment. Senior brother for so many years, I know your temperament very well. Today I just want to remind you that Zhang Heng is the seed of the sect. If there is an accident, no one can escape. Remember, don't make a mistake. Elder son looked gloomy and said nothing. Then he turned around and flew away with his sword. Ellipsis. Early the next morning, at the outer gate square. There are huge crowds of people, noisy. In the middle of the square, on a huge arena with a radius of 100 meters, Su Cheng, dressed in white clothes, said loudly. Everyone immediately fell silent. Let me talk about the scoring rules first. The winner gets 1 point, the loser loses 1 point. There is no winner for 10 minutes. It is considered a tie and neither side scores points. The top 50 disciples come on stage to draw lots. As soon as the words fell, Zhang Heng and the other 50 people immediately walked onto the ring, and under the guidance of the handyman who came up, the drawing of lots began. Besides, a deacon kept counting votes. Shi Chengshuang, number 22. La Weiyan, number 13. Zhang Heng, number 6. Qi Peng, number 5. Ellipsis. Exciting. Zhang Heng and Qi Peng met in the first round. Qi Peng is so unlucky. He was seriously injured in the first stage of the trial. I heard that he could recover after taking a small pill. But now, in the second stage of the arena competition, he ran into the invincible Zhang from the beginning. Constant. If he wants to get good results, Qi Peng has no choice but to admit defeat. Otherwise, if he is injured by Zhang Heng, it will be difficult to deal with it next time. At this moment, in the eyes of most outer disciples, Zhang Heng is already the absolute number 1. Even those who had previously sworn that Qi Peng could defend the championship suddenly changed their minds when they learned from Su Cheng that Zhang Heng killed the Junchi warrior. in everyone's eyes. In this sect competition, there is no longer any suspense for the winner. What everyone wants to see is just the competition for other rankings. And Zhang Heng's sweeping style. Among the crowd, Qi Peng was holding a wooden sign with "No 5 feet" written on it, and his face was ugly. He has clearly realized that he is by no means Zhang Heng's opponent. Before, he had also thought about what he would do if he faced Zhang Heng. Beat. Humiliating yourself. If he is injured, it may affect his subsequent performance. Admit defeat. If you think about it rationally, this is indeed the best choice. After all, everyone knows Zhang Heng's terrifying strength, and it is not shameful to admit defeat. Alas, just admit defeat. The difference in strength is indeed too big, so as not to humiliate yourself. Qi Peng sighed secretly and had some calculations in his mind. No. 1 Diao Gaoyuan, number 2 Fu Yunhe, please come on stage. Two young men jumped onto the ring and started fighting fiercely, with the sound of swords clashing constantly. In battles between warriors, the winner can often be decided in a very short time. After all, in the words of Zhang Heng's previous life, they are all masters of high attack and low defense, so they are naturally fast in fighting. It didn't take long. The battles of the first two groups have been completed. No. 5 Qi Peng, number 6 Zhang Heng, please come on stage. Zhang Heng jumped up, his eyes fell on Qi Peng in the audience, and sighed softly. A month ago, you and I agreed to meet in the decisive battle of the sect competition to decide the outcome. I didn't expect that we met so early. It's God's will. Come on stage. Let me see what the so-called number one person in the outer sect is like. Qi Peng's face froze, and the word, admit defeat, that he was about to say was blocked in his mouth. He could clearly feel that the eyes of many people around him were on him. Or joking, or mocking. The title of the first person in the outer sect was something he was proud of before, even proud of. But now, the title that came out of Zhang Heng's mouth was like a sharp thorn, piercing deeply into his heart. What? The dignified leader of the outer sect, isn't it because he doesn't dare to go on stage? Zhang Heng's mouth corners raised slightly, revealing a vague smile. Qi Peng clenched his fists and his face turned red. When you go on stage, you will definitely be humiliated and very likely to be injured, which will affect the subsequent competition. If you do'n't go to the stage, you are crowded by words and stared at by countless teachers. Nearly 10,000 people were on the field, almost completely silent, waiting for Qi Peng's reaction. Beside the ring, Su Qing, who was standing with his hands behind his back, looked at Qi Peng, whose expression kept changing, shook his head slightly, and gave him a 4-character evaluation in his heart. The character is too bad. Chapter 27. Domineering. I am the champion. At this time, Qi Peng suddenly calmed down his breathing and his face became calm. He jumped up and landed on the ring, standing not far from Zhang Heng. Zhang Heng, I know I'm no match for you, but no one wants me to surrender without a fight. Bring it on. Qi Peng unsheathed his sword and shouted in a deep voice. The body was shot out with electricity at the same time. Zhang Heng's face was calm. He raised his hand and slammed down his long sword. This palm, like a huge meteorite falling from the sky, collided with the tip of the sword with a violent momentum that crushed everything. Chang. The blade instantly shattered. Zhang Heng's palm continued to slap forward without hesitation. The strong wind pressure hit his face, making Qi Peng almost unable to breathe. He turned around suddenly, trying to avoid the palm. But Zhang Heng was faster than him. He immediately turned his palms into elbows and moved his feet at the same time. A violent elbow hit Qi Peng's side. Bump. Qi Peng's body instantly flew sideways and landed with a bang. After a few rebounds, he fell to the corner of the ring. The perfect Zon-level, mountain-breaking fist was so terrifying. Even a seemingly simple elbow strike caused Qi Peng's internal injuries as if they were all torn apart. With one blow, all the internal organs, muscles, bones, flesh and blood were damaged. So much so that Qi Peng couldn't get up for a long time. The audience was instantly in an uproar. Instant kill. Zhang Heng is truly invincible. Even Qi Peng, one of the favorites to win the championship, can't withstand a move in front of him. Forget about Qi Peng. I'm afraid no one in the outer sect can withstand his blow. I dare to say that Zhang Heng is definitely the first person in history to reach the physical realm. A corner of the arena. Chi Peng endured the severe pain that felt like tearing all over his body and managed to get up. Looking at Zhang Heng's young face, his expression became complicated for a moment. Who is not a genius if he can enter the outside world? Who can become the favorite to win the championship? Who is not a genius among geniuses? But a genius like him was powerless to fight back in front of Zhang Heng. With a random blow, he was seriously injured. I lost. Chi Peng said sadly. He then stood up and staggered towards the bottom of the ring in despair. This defeat dealt an unprecedented blow to his confidence. All arrogance and vanity dissipate like a dream. As for Zhang Heng on the stage, he had no intention of stepping down. He looked around. Wherever his eyes passed, everyone fell silent. Finally, his domineering eyes fell on the people in the waiting area. Too weak. All of you, come together. Let me feel some blood. Feel the real battle. Zhang Heng's mouth widened and he smiled wildly. The energy and blood in the body are surging crazily, the arrogance around the body is rising continuously, and the black hair is flying wantonly, looking like crazy. The onlookers around the ring felt numb all over, and the blood in their chests suddenly surged. At this moment, Zhang Heng's childish face was full of domineering power that swept everything in the eyes of everyone. One person declares war on everyone else at the top of the list at the same time. How powerful! What confidence! How domineering! At this moment, someone in the audience suddenly shouted, "Get on stage!" Gradually, some people began to echo, "Come on stage! Come on stage!" Soon, all the onlookers shouted excitedly, "Get on stage! Get on stage!" Endless waves of sound surged back and forth in the square, stimulating everyone's blood. Beside the ring, the deacon acting as the referee was about to stop him when a big hand pressed on his shoulder. The referee turned around and saw that it was the deacon Su Cheng. He shook his head, but kept looking at the stage with interest. Don't stop him. Waiting for the war zone. Except for Zhang Heng, the top 50 are all gathered here. Their faces were stiff and they clenched their fists. But now, Zhang Heng alone wanted to challenge 48 of them at the same time. This was simply a humiliation to them. However, Zhang Heng's power is obvious to everyone. Chi Peng, who had a great chance of winning the championship, couldn't even make a single move in front of him, so all of them would probably end up in the same fate in front of Zhang Heng. Even if they go together, they can't break the defense, and there is no hope of winning at all. In the arena, Zhang Heng shook his head with disappointment, and then scolded in a deep voice. If you want to fight, get on stage. If you don't fight, you will admit defeat. As a warrior, you must either rise up and fight, or you must have the courage to admit your weakness. How can you talk about martial arts so coyly? As soon as these words came out, the onlookers rushed to the battlefield and booed. All kinds of contemptuous words continued to reach the ears of everyone in the waiting area. Everyone's face turned blue and white. At this time, Lan Gaojuo, who was originally one of the favorites to win the championship, took a deep breath and seemed to be muttering to himself or saying to everyone, "Yes, if you don't dare to face your own strength, how can you talk about being brave and diligent?" Then, he held his head high and said loudly, "I, Lan Gaojuo, admit defeat." The noisy square suddenly fell silent. Another person held his head high and said, "I, Mi Pepe, admit defeat." Everyone in the waiting area spoke one after another until everyone gave up. Someone shouted, "Senior brother Zhang, you are invincible." All onlookers immediately echoed, "Invincible, invincible." The monstrous sound swept wildly in all directions. Even a passing bird in the air had its internal organs shattered by the sound and fell to the ground dead. Chi Peng, who took the healing elixir and sat cross-legged, looked at the high-spirited Zhang Heng on the ring with a complex expression, and breathed a sigh of relief after a long time. He completely let go of his obsessions and became calm and calm. He has clearly realized that Zhang Heng is not a being that he can match. The other side, Meng Lingshou, a talented girl who once lost to Zhang Heng in a duel ring, also had a complicated look on her face. More than a month ago, I was still competing against Zhang Heng in the ring. But now, the other party is so high-spirited that he has crushed the entire outer sect and become the absolute number one. She even had an instinctive intuition that this handsome young man was becoming a legend step by step. She subconsciously thought of the opponent's punch that had passed her high point during the duel, and her face suddenly turned red. In the arena, Zhang Heng raised his hand and pressed it down gently, and everyone immediately fell silent. He looked at everyone in the waiting area with approval. That's right. Only when you face all your strengths and weaknesses can you be truly strong. Since you have all admitted defeat, then this time, I will be the champion. As he spoke, he looked at Su Qing, the deacon on the side, expressing inquiry with his eyes. Su Qing suddenly laughed, and then spoke loudly. This year's champion is Zhang Heng. All the onlookers immediately cheered loudly, as if they had won the championship. The cheers and shouts stopped for a long time. After Zhang Heng stepped down, 2 more people stepped onto the ring and started a fierce battle. But the spectators were still excited and chatting lively about the scene just now. Zhang Heng came to a corner to close his eyes and rest. There was one fight after another. After the first round, the second round begins immediately. Until noon, the entire arena competition has come to an end. Zhang Heng is naturally a well-deserved champion. As for the others, after further competition, their rankings were gradually determined. The runner-up, Lam Gaojuo. The third runner-up is Ji Yu Zhaojun. Dian Jun, Qi Peng. It is worth mentioning that Qi Peng suffered serious internal injuries in the battle with Zhang Heng. Even after taking the healing elixir, it still affected the performance of his strength. In the second round, it was okay to face other players, but in the third round, I met another favorite to win the championship, Lam Gaojuo, and was defeated by him. At this point, the finals have come to an end. Chapter 28. Will you become my disciple? As the finals came to an end, Su Qing once again stepped onto the stage and announced the rankings loudly. Then, the ranking rewards for this time began to be announced. The championship reward is 1,000 chi and blood pills and 10,000 contribution points. In the next year, an additional 100 contribution points will be given every day until entering the inner gate. As soon as this was said, everyone who had already calmed down was in an uproar again. This reward is so amazing. Why is it so exaggerated? It's almost 10 times that of previous years. How come there's no news at all before? Is there something shady? Even Zhang Heng looked at the stage in shock. So many rewards, converted into money, are equivalent to 200,000 taels of silver, which is equivalent to 200 million in the previous life. Coupled with the daily quota of contribution points, it is equivalent to 1 million per day. This is just an annual competition for the outer disciples of the 8th peak. How can there be such a generous reward? At this time, a person said thoughtfully. Do you think it's possible that a senior executive took a fancy to Zhang Heng and deliberately benefited him? As soon as this statement came out, many people were stunned. Zhang Heng's peerless talent is definitely enough to alarm the sect's senior officials. With Zhang Heng's strength, there is no doubt that he will be the champion of the sect competition. Hence, the sudden increase in championship rewards this time was almost clearly given to Zhang Heng. At this time, Su Qing on the stage continued to announce the next rewards. The runner-up reward is 50 chi and blood pills and 500 contribution points. In the next year, an additional 5 contribution points will be given every day until entering the inner gate. The third runner-up reward is 30 chi and blood pills and 300 contribution points. In the next year, an additional 5 contribution points will be given every day until entering the inner gate. Ellipsis. Starting from the second place, the subsequent rewards are similar to those in previous years, which almost confirms the guesses of the onlookers. Everyone looked at Zhang Heng below the ring with envy. Zhang Heng has reached the sky in one step. With just one outer competition, we have entered the attention of senior officials and received so many resource rewards at once. From now on, we will surely soar into the sky. On the stage, Su Qing shouted loudly. Top 50, come on stage to receive rewards. Zhang Heng and others walked onto the stage one after another and stood in a long row behind Su Qing. Dozens of handymen each held a small wooden box and distributed it to each winning disciple. Zhang Heng, who was in the middle of the queue, received a luxurious wooden box with golden patterns. I declare that in the year 3022 of the Tai Sui calendar, the competition between the outer disciples of the 8th peak has officially ended. After Su Qing made the announcement, he asked everyone to leave, but left Zhang Heng alone. Just when Zhang Heng was confused, Su Qing said solemnly, "The clan wants to see you." Zhang Heng suddenly looked solemn. The leader of the Deluo sect, placed on the aqua blue planet, is at least equivalent to the chairman level of a $1 trillion consortium. Let alone ordinary outer disciples, even inner disciples and even core disciples basically have no chance of being summoned by him alone. Not to mention that this is a world where martial arts are respected. Regardless of his power, the leader of Deluo sect has a cultivation level that reaches the heavens and the earth. He is like a **** on earth, which is far beyond what Zhongheng can look up to at this moment. Finally, are you going to see the world's advanced combat power? Zhongheng's blood began to boil. Ellipsis. After an hour. The fifth peak, the main training hall of the sect master. 4 tall deacons in blue stood quietly outside. Su Qing came here with Zhongheng holding a wooden box in his arms. After the announcement, Zhongheng temporarily stored the wooden box at the deacon's office and walked into the hall alone. I saw an elegant middle-aged man in purple, sitting cross-legged in the middle of the empty hall, his eyes slightly closed. Zhongheng, come here. Bai Haokang's gentle voice echoed throughout the hall. Zhongheng immediately stepped forward as instructed and stood 10 meters away. Sect Master, sit down. Zhongheng looked around at the floor with countless fine sword marks, and sat on the floor opposite Bai Haokang. Bai Haokang finally opened his eyes completely at this time. His eyes were like a deep ocean, vast and thick. Your father, Zhang Wenjing, was once the elder of our Deluo sect. After his death, you were entrusted to an ordinary family as a young child. Did you ever complain? Zhongheng was silent for a moment, and then said, I had it when I was a child, but not later. This is true. With his memories completely integrated, he fully understands the thoughts of young Zhongheng. When he was young, his parents were elders of the Deluo sect. He could be said to have lived a life of fine clothing and fine food, and he had never been short of various precious cultivation resources since he was a child. Unfortunately, his body is still weak and his bones are extremely weak. At the age of 8, his parents died, and his life fell from heaven to hell. He can only be regarded as a family member of the elders, not a member of the sect. After the death of his parents, he is not qualified to continue to stay in the sect. Especially because the sect's forces are complicated and his parents also have opponents. Even if he stays, he will face a lot of bullying because of his extremely poor cultivation talent. Of course, these are things that the young Zhongheng does not know clearly. All he knew was that the sect kicked him out just after his parents died. So, I have always been full of dissatisfaction with Deluo sect, as well as complex emotions mixed with nostalgia and yearning. Until, after 6 years of living in the secular world, young Zhongheng, who has experienced many hardships and has grown his character, returned to Deluo sect again. Let go of all the pride, self-esteem, face, vanity and other emotions in your heart, and beg to enter the sect, even if it means becoming a handyman. He wants the chance to become a warrior, no matter how slim. As a result, he successfully became a servant of Deluo sect. Zhongheng, who now has the memories of 2 generations merged, can understand it even more. In fact, elder is just a position equivalent to Deluo sect. This is similar to the consortium in the previous life. His parents are senior executives, and the company provides accommodation and various benefits. However, after the death of their parents, the children cannot inherit their parents' benefits, so they naturally have to find another way out. On the contrary, it is a sign of goodwill that the sect can properly place him. As for how his parents died, where are the personal property located at the time of death? Is there any sect pension after death? There are no relevant detailed memories in young Zhongheng's mind. I think it was because I was still young at that time and didn't know much about the world, so I didn't pay attention. Bai Haokang looked at Zhongheng's expression and said calmly, Daluo Zong is Daluo Zong for everyone, so the perfect system must be followed by everyone. With poor talent, no one's children will be able to get started. If you have good talent, the sect will naturally support you vigorously. This is the foundation for Deluo sect's long-lasting prosperity and its continued success for thousands of years. Zhongheng nodded silently. Indeed, in the many novels he read in his previous life, many sect disciples were always trying to kill me or you. They were full of hostility from top to bottom, and no one had a sense of belonging to the sect. I don't know why such a sect can continue. So, after traveling here, he actually has a relatively strong sense of identification with the overall atmosphere of Deluo sect. At this time, Bai Haokang suddenly asked, "Do you think your talent is good enough?" "Good," Zhang Heng replied confidently. Bai Haokang shook his head. "Uncertain. I'm 16 years old, and I'm already invincible in the physical realm, and I've even surpassed levels to defeat Junshi realm warriors. Doesn't this prove my talent?" Zhang Heng asked in surprise. Bai Haokang did not answer, but said, "Even I don't know how many realms there are in cultivation, but they are generally divided into 3 stages. The first stage is refining, including the mortal realm and the physical realm. The second stage is chi refining. It includes the true chi realm, the innate realm, the spiritual si realm, and the all-seeing realm. The third stage is to refine the gods. Starting from the Wanxiang realm, all subsequent realms should be at this stage. The focus of each stage of cultivation is different. So, some people make great progress in the first stage, but become ordinary people in the second stage. Some people are ordinary in the first stage, but suddenly explode in the second stage. So, what you have shown so far is just the amazing potential in the refining stage. In other words, it is true that no one can defeat him in the physical realm, but no one can guarantee how much advantage he will have when he reaches the true energy realm or even the innate realm." Zhang Heng raised his eyebrows and said, "So, why was I judged to have poor talent when I was a child? Maybe I have a good talent for refining energy." Bai Haokang still looked calm. "The talent for refining depends on the root bone, the talent for refining chi depends on the spiritual root, and the talent for refining the spirit depends on the understanding. And your bones and your spiritual faculties are both extremely poor." Zhang Heng said helplessly. "Okay, then the sect leader asked me to come here this time, is it? Are you willing to be my disciple?" Zhang Heng was slightly startled. He did have a guess in this regard before, but when the sect master said the theory just now, he overturned this guess. Because, since there is no guarantee that his talent will be good in the future, then the best choice is to let him grow naturally within the sect. But now that the sect master said this, he was confused. "Your understanding is very good. In just 1 month, you have reached perfection in several techniques. If you are an ordinary person, no matter how good your understanding is, it will not be of much use, because you cannot cultivate to the level of refining a god. And not only your understanding, but also your current fundamental performance is excellent. If you refine your essence and your spirit, you will definitely be successful in the future. So, you are qualified to be my disciple." Bai Haokang looked at him calmly. Zhang Heng asked tentatively, "If I become your disciple, will there be countless resource subsidies? Are there any special secrets that can be taught for free?" "Yes, but it will also be adjusted based on your subsequent performance." Bai Haokang nodded. "Okay, I do." Hearing the affirmative reply, Zhang Heng immediately nodded in agreement. With the tenfold reward from the sect competition, coupled with the massive resource subsidies from being a disciple of the sect master, this can't take off immediately. Zhang Heng felt secretly happy. "You go down first and come back to see me after you reach the true chi realm." At this time, Bai Haokang continued. Zhang Heng's face suddenly stiffened, and he had a bad premonition in his heart. "Sect Master. Master, will there be any subsidies before I break through? 10 times the reward is not enough." Bai Haokang's expression finally changed and he glared at Zhang Heng. Chapter 29. An all-out kill. Alas, what a pity. The feeling of losing something again is so uncomfortable. Walking on the way back to the peak, Zhang Heng looked sad. "Originally, I thought I would get extra resources by becoming a disciple, but it turned out to be the championship reward from the previous competition. Although the money is generous enough, disappointment is inevitable." What makes Zhang Heng even more confused is, the sect leader asked him to break through to the true chi realm, but he didn't say what specific rewards he would receive after breaking through. Previously, during the trial in the Shaluo Mountains, after a duel with Bu Hanyi, he discovered the ultra-high potential point reward for leapfrogging battles, and he made up his mind at that time. Earn enough potential points and then break through. He has even planned to challenge the inner disciples as an outer disciple after returning to the sect, in order to gain a large number of potential points. But now, the sect master's mysterious reward is waiting ahead. As long as you break through, you can get it. While thinking, Zhang Heng returned to the outer gate area of the 8th peak and walked towards his small courtyard. That's it. No matter what rewards master has, let's wait until I earn enough potential points. Having made up his mind, Zhang Heng, holding the wooden box in one hand, pushed the door open and walked into the courtyard. In the small courtyard, a pretty and lovely girl is sitting on a stone bench in the corner of the yard. It is Zhang Heng's childhood sweetheart Wen Qingxie. Brother Zhang Heng, I heard that you won the sect competition. Seeing Zhang Heng come in, Wen Qingxie immediately stood up and shouted excitedly. Zhang Heng laughed and walked into the house. Calm down, calm down. It's just a small matter. The two of them walked into the house one after another. Zhang Heng put down the wooden box in his hand and looked at Wen Qingxie again. Qingxie, you heard about my winning the championship so soon. Yes. My maid told me that you are the #1 person in the outer sect, and you are even called the strongest person in the physical realm in history. Wen Qingxui's eyes were shining with starlight, her face full of admiration and yearning. It's too exaggerated. It's not that powerful. I just spent the time that others drink coffee on practicing, so I'm only a little bit stronger. Zhang Heng chuckled. At this moment, what he didn't notice was that Wen Qingxie seemed to have discovered something special. Her pupils suddenly shrank and her whole body was shaken. Then he quickly returned to his usual playful and innocent self, and asked curiously. Coffee. What is coffee? It's just a delicious tea. Zhang Heng casually changed the subject and chatted for a while before Wen Qingxie pouted and said. Father asked me to tell you that I haven't seen you for a long time. Please come and sit at my house when you have time. Zhang Heng smiled playfully and nodded in agreement. Okay. I will visit you when I have time. He and Wen Qingxie had been childhood sweethearts since they were young. Later, after joining the sect, they got along quite a lot, so their relationship was naturally good. But for Wen Qingxui's father, the young Zhang Heng didn't have much good feelings in his heart. In my memory, Elder Wen has always been a good friend of his father, and he was always called Brother Zhang. But after the death of his parents, Elder Wen's attitude towards him quickly became cold. If the sect placed him in an ordinary family, it was because of the system. But speaking personally, my father's best friend, my father's younger brother, behaves so coldly, which is really a bit realistic and ruthless. At the beginning, in order to join the sect, he specifically asked Elder Wen for help. He owed him a favor, but this did not mean that he had a good impression of him. He will return the favor. He will keep his distance. Among the entire sect, the only person who can be considered emotionally concerned at present is Wen Qingxie in front of him. After the two chatted for a while, Wen Qingxie jumped away. In her mind, she asked with a smile. Sister Lingyun, did you investigate carefully just now? What is Brother Zhang Heng's strange encounter? The voice of Xiao Lingyun responded in her mind. There should also be a fragment of the soul of a powerful person in his mind. If I release the power of my soul to explore, it is very likely to be discovered. You are still too weak for me to expose you. So, we can't investigate it carefully at the moment. The smile on Wen Qingxui's face was still cute. Really? Then forget it. This is also a good thing. Ellipsis. After Wen Qingxie left, Zhang Heng locked the courtyard door, took out the qi and blood pill and started practicing. Thousands of qi and blood pills, at his current cultivation speed, would be enough for him to practice for 1,000 hours. Even if you practice for 6 hours a day, you can last for half a year. As qi and blood pills were taken one after another, Zhang Heng's potential points began another round of crazy growth. 10 days later, in the small courtyard, Zhang Heng's whole body was enveloped in a rich and blood-like arrogance, stretching his body to his heart's content, practicing the original creation skill. The flames of arrogance are rising and the wind is howling. After a long time, he closed his fist and stood up. The sound of the wind stopped, and calm returned to the courtyard. Zhang Heng opened his personal panel and took a look. Host. Zhang Heng. Cultivation level. 10th level of physical realm, 23/100,000. Main Kung Fu. Yuanxi Creation Kung Fu, Heaven level, Introduction. Martial arts techniques. Broken Mountain Fist, Zon level perfect. Fast Wind Step, Zon level perfect. Secret Method. Golden Image Skill, Earth level, 3rd level. Potential points. 1,160,000. He took a deep breath and ordered in his mind. Upgrade. Yuanshi's creation power. Ding. Spend 1 million potential points to learn original creation skill, heaven level proficiency. At the same time, a huge flow of information poured into his mind, and a magical change seemed to be happening inside his body. Zhang Heng lit a stick of incense in the corner of the yard. Then he swallowed a qi and blood pill again and began to practice the original creation skill at the proficient level. The stomach wriggled crazily, prompting the qi and blood pill to be digested quickly, and countless heat currents rushed to all parts of the body. After a long time, the qi and blood pill has been completely digested. Zhang Heng immediately turned his head and looked at the corner of the yard, and suddenly felt happy. It only took half an hour. Compared to before the upgrade, the efficiency has doubled. He opened his personal panel and looked at it again. Potential points. 170,000. The number of potential points obtained has not changed, it is still 10,000 points. At this rate, at least 10 qi and blood pills will be digested every day, which is enough to increase the potential points by more than 100,000. I want to retreat in seclusion and digest all the qi and blood pills. Thinking of this, Zhang Heng suddenly became excited. This kind of practice that can make huge progress every moment is really addictive. Except for fist-to-flesh fighting. Only this kind of latent cultivation can make Zhang Heng's blood boil. Ellipsis. While Zhang Hengqin was practicing, somewhere not far from his small courtyard, Lei Song, who had been monitoring him, frowned. Elder Sun gave him a task time limit of half a year. He already had a rough plan in his mind and was just waiting for Zhang Heng to take the bait. But now, after Zhang Heng won the competition, he didn't even leave the house once for more than 10 days. Even next, who knows when he will go out. According to Elder Sun's request, Zhang Heng must be killed without leaving any human traces. You can't kill him openly or assassinate him. You can only find a way to lure him out of the sect and get him involved in a certain incident before you can kill him reasonably. So now, all we can do is wait. Wait for Zhang Heng to leave the sect. At that time, it will be a decisive blow with all your strength. Chapter 30. You alone are worthy of taking action against senior brother Zhang. After the competition between the outer disciples. In the eyes of most people, life has returned to calm. I don't know when it started, but a rumor spread among the outer disciples of Judah Peak, and it even tended to become more and more exaggerated. Zhang Heng from the 8th peak is the first person in history to reach the physical realm. No one can match the 9 peaks of Deluo sect, the entire Feng region, the entire Qingzhou, and even the entire Tianyuan dynasty, and no one is even qualified to compare with them. Let alone the outer disciples, even any inner disciple is just a chicken and a dog in front of Zhang Heng. Strong men above the 6th level of the true Qi realm were all killed head-on by Zhang Heng in the physical realm. Once Zhang Heng breaks through to the true Qi realm, he will be directly invincible within the 9 peaks. Similar words continue to circulate in Judafeng. The outer disciples of the 8th peak saw Zhang Heng's terrifying strength with their own eyes, and they only had blind worship in their hearts. But for other peaks, such words are simply provocative. Even not only the outer disciples, but also some geniuses among the inner disciples felt dissatisfied. An outer sect disciple, a junior who is only 16 years old, dares to call the inner sect invincible. How arrogant and ignorant is this? Of course, they know it too. Outer disciples are juniors after all, and if they bully those above, they will most likely face punishment from the sect. Therefore, the inner disciples just expressed disdain and did not pay much attention to it. They just regarded it as children's lies. Besides, not only Zhang Heng's strength and talent, but also the rewards for the championship of the 8th peak outer disciples were also discussed by many people. To know. Considering that there are too many outer disciples, the competition of the 9 peaks is conducted separately and ranked separately. Each peak has its own competition champion. Now, only the 8th peak's grand competition champion reward has increased tenfold, while the other peaks remain as usual. In the eyes of other peaks, how unfair this is. As time goes by, these rumors not only do not stop, but intensify. Finally, someone couldn't bear it anymore. This day, Cao Bin, the outer sect champion of the 1st peak, brought several followers to the outer sect martial arts arena of the 8th peak. They were here to cause trouble anyway, so the group was simply arrogant. One of the followers said directly in the martial arts arena. Where are the masters from the outer sect of the 8th peak? Senior brother Sao Bin, the number 1 person in the outer sect of the 1st peak, is here. Come all over to pay homage. As soon as these words came out, most of the 8th peak disciples were immediately angered. Some people came forward in anger and were surrounded by several people who were coming. Some people saw one of the coming people. The man was carrying a long sword on his back, his body was tall and straight, and his expression was indifferent, giving people an invisible sense of oppression. That's Sao Bin. Sao Bin, the first person from the outer sect of the 1st peak. Most people don't care. What about the first person in the outer sect of the 1st peak? In front of Zhang Heng, they are all vulnerable. At this time, Sao Bin shouted coldly. Stop talking nonsense. If there is a master, just go directly to the ring and see the real results. You go around bragging about how awesome Zhang Heng is at the 8th peak all day long, just don't let me down. As he spoke, Sao Bin jumped up and landed on the ring not far away. Bring it on. Today, I will sweep across the outer gate of the 8th peak. Under the ring, everyone in the 8th peak knew very well that the opponent was, after all, the number 1 person in the outer sect of the 1st peak. It was impossible for ordinary disciples to be his opponents. At least they had to be at the top of the outer sect to defeat the opponent. Most people go up there only to humiliate themselves. But everyone looked around. Several people with higher rankings, including Zhang Heng, were not in the martial arts arena at this time. Some people immediately volunteered and were going to invite some senior brothers with higher rankings. One of them came outside Zhang Heng's small courtyard. Hearing the whistling sound of fists and wind in the courtyard, which was like a ghost crying, and the wooden sign with the word, retreat, written on the door, he hesitated for a moment, swallowed carefully, and asked softly. Senior brother Zhang, the first person from the outer sect of the 1st peak has come to challenge you and challenges you by name. After a long time, a thunderous voice sounded in the courtyard. No time. This man had a troubled face, but he didn't dare to disturb Zhang Heng anymore, so he had to turn around and leave. Fortunately, not only did someone come to notify Zhang Heng, but also someone from Qipeng and a few others came to notify them. As for the first person in the outer sect of the 1st peak, several people are naturally interested in seeing him. So, Qipeng, Jiyu Zhaojun, and Lan Gaojuo came to the martial arts field one after another. Lan Gaojuo was the first to arrive, so he took the lead. You are not Zhang Heng. Who is Zhang Heng? Let him come up. Looking at Lan Gaojuo, Sao Bin frowned. Lan Gaojuo sneered and said disdainfully. If you want to challenge senior brother Zhang, you must pass my level first. He drew the sword out of its sheath, held the handle of the sword with both hands, and focused on it. Okay. In that case, let's defeat you first. Sao Bin's body shot out suddenly, and at the same time he drew out his long sword and slashed it down diagonally. The long knife cuts through the air, as if cutting off the air, causing it to make a sharp whine. Lan Gaojuo is not to be outdone. He is also a practitioner of swordsmanship, and has mastered the perfect level of Luoyue swordsmanship. The sword slashed out, like a crescent moon falling from the sky. It was extremely fast and its momentum was even more fierce. Chang. The blades collided violently, and the harsh sound spread throughout the countryside. The two figures turned into phantoms, constantly intertwined and separated. The sound of the blades clashing was endless, and the shock wave spread in all directions. It is true that the opponent is the champion of the outer sect of the 1st peak, but Lan Gaojuo is also a person who has the ability to win the championship. Who is stronger and who is weaker will have to be compared to know. It didn't take long. During the battle, Lan Gaojuo's expression suddenly changed. His sword is whining. Sure enough, the next moment. Chang. The blade was cut off, and the opponent's long knife continued to attack, cutting a 20-centimeter long wound on the lower abdomen of Lan Gaojuo, who could not avoid it. It's a treasure. Lan Gaojuo covered the wound with one hand and looked gloomy. That's right. Sao Bin put away his sword and stood up, speaking indifferently. He knew clearly that Zhang Hengyang was so praised by the 8th peak. Although there were traces of exaggeration, his strength must be really terrifying. So, before coming to the 8th peak, he specially prepared this treasure-level long sword to enhance his chances of winning. But now, even though he won, he felt a little uneasy inside. The man in front of him is not much weaker than him in terms of strength alone. So, Zhang Heng, who is recognized as the strongest by all the outer disciples of the eighth peak, must be much stronger than the person in front of him. In this case, I am afraid that I am really no match for Zhang Heng. No, if you do this, you will really be embarrassed on the eighth peak. Thinking of this, Sao Bin suddenly wanted to retreat. At this time, Lan Gaojuo walked off the ring holding his wound. Chi Peng jumped up. After experiencing the disastrous defeat in the competition, Chi Peng seemed to be a completely different person and his mind became calmer. He is indeed a genius. The changes in his character after being struck and awakened made him achieve a breakthrough in martial arts, and his meteoric sword technique reached a perfect level. You alone are worthy of taking action against senior brother Zhang. Chi Peng looked at Sao Bin coldly. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.